tribe, and they come from a small group of islands down in the Caribbean. Her English name is Marie, and her Taino name is Conch. Next, a young man all the way from Oklahoma. He's from the Kiowa tribe, and his English name is Matthew. His Kiowa name is Corn Eater. Next, young man also from the state of Oklahoma, from the Choctaw tribe. His English name is Michael, and his Choctaw name is Dancing Wolf. And right here, a young man who is descended from a group of Native American people who live right across the river in New Jersey. They're called the Lenape or the Delaware, and his English name is Alan, and his Lenape name is Shooting Star. And myself, I'm from two tribes. My father is from the Hopi tribe from Arizona, and my mother is from the Winnebago tribe from Nebraska. My English name is Lewis, and my Winnebago name is Wipama Chirechoka, which is a Winnebago word, and what that means in English is green rainbow. So that's who I am. All right, I'd like to start by doing some songs and dances for you that come from a group of Native American people who come from right here where you live in New York State. They're called the Haudenosaunee, people of the Longhouse or the Iroquois. And this first dance I'd like to do for you is a dance that they do to celebrate the coming of spring. Now we're just going into the fall season, and then of course after that we go into the winter season. And in this part of the country, you usually have very long, cold winters. And when the springtime comes, it's a very wonderful time of the year because the weather gets warmer, the trees start to get their leaves back, the flowers blossom. It's a beautiful time of the year, and so to celebrate the coming of spring, they do this dance. It's called the Robin Dance. And the reason it's called the Robin Dance is because the robin is one of the very first birds that you see after the long, cold winter. And when you see the robin, you know that spring is coming soon. And so, in their dance, they have some very quick hop-like steps, which is an imitation of the robin as it hops along the ground. Robin Dance of the Iroquois. like to do is honor their faith and social lives. And I'd just like to mention that what we're doing for you today
There's a line for that?
No.
and I think that's important to remember because we're not doing any ceremonial dances, we're not doing any kind of ritual dances.
Sorry, you
No,
like?
no, go
Okay.
good. Sorry.
The reason I mention that
I was trying to tell you this way. Oh, I was like this way. Because I saw you guys walking that way.
Oh yeah. I was like, I think it's over here.
Oh, I was getting money. Sorry. Yes, Luke. It's okay. People on board all the time.
Little man.
Oh, yeah. Where'd it go? Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Follow me on Instagram.
Luke, look at you. Your mask went 3 chairs, 4 chairs down. Yeah, you could go run around, but around here, not far. Go find some other kids to play with. How much are the ribbon skirts?
They're 80. 80? This only this one here is 125. It's marked.
Okay. They're so cute.
Yeah. There's another black one in there in the bin.
You guys only take cash, right? You don't have like a...
No, we have cards.
Oh, you have a card? Okay. I'm about to come back. Okay.
My show just got home. My show just got home. I'm like,
You need this? So if we one shot under
trying to get out of the fishing business. Well, the young man and the boys looked at such an exciting movement that when they went back to the longhouse, they made up a dance in which they tried to copy Long's movements of the fish. Fish dances.
Let me go get mine.
So they're like
I'm at the same time. I looked at his face and the face.
Love your shirt.
Now, I'd just like to mention something. You may have noticed that when I introduced all of the members of our group, there were members of the group that actually came from the Iroquois tribe. Now, one of the reasons for that is because the Thunderbird American Indian Dancers, part of our mission is to travel to all of the different reservations throughout the country and to learn and to song to learn the songs and dances of various tribes, and then to bring them back here to the East and to perform them, and to show you that there is a big difference between the music and the dancing of the different tribes. They're not all the same. They're very, very different, as you'll see as we go along. Different rhythms, different kinds of movements, and that's because there are many, many different tribes. I don't know how many of you know this, but today in the United States, there are a little over 5 million Native American people living. And not only are there 5 million Native American people, but there are over 500 different tribes in the United States. But there's something else I think that's very important to understand. When we talk about Native American people, we're not talking just about the United States. Our homeland, where we come from, is 2 continents. 2 continents. North America and South America. That's where our people come from. That's our homeland. Now, I have no idea how many Native people there are in Canada. I have no idea how many there are in Mexico. And I certainly have no idea how many there are in South America. But today, in 2021, I don't think I'd be mistaken if I were to tell you that there were millions of Native American people living today in North and South America. Yes. And we have a very vibrant culture. It's very much alive, as you see. We're sharing these songs and dances with you, and these are dances and songs that we do today. Okay? But we have the history that goes back many, many years ago. Now, going to the next dance among the Iroquois people, this is one of their favorite social dances again, and it's called the smoke dance. Now, the origin of this dance goes back maybe 400 or 500 years ago when the Iroquois people used to live. It was called a long house. And that's just exactly what it was. A very, very long building, where maybe 5 or 6 families would live together. The long house was made out of bark. It had a bark roof, bark walls, and a dirt floor. Now, in the wintertime, when it got very cold outside, in order to keep warm inside of the longhouse, they would have to build a fire. But in order to build a fire inside of the house, they had to have a hole in the ceiling for the smoke to go out. Now, on certain days during the winter time, there wasn't enough wind or draft that came in the doorways to carry the smoke out the smoke hole. So what the people would do is they would get together, get very close to the fires, and they would dance. And as they moved their feet and they moved their bodies, this would help to make enough wind or draft to carry the smoke out the smoke hole. So they call that dance the smoke dance. Thank you. Now we're going to move from New York State. We're going to go out to the Great Plains area, out to North and South Dakota for our next dance. And this is a dance that the men do today. I do want to mention that when you talk about a powwow, a lot of people always ask me, what is a powwow? Well, among the Native American people, when we say powwow, What we're talking about is a social gathering just like this, where the people come together. They come together to dance, they come together to sing, to meet old friends, to make new friends, and to really just have a good time. That's what a powwow is. And at many of the big powwows, they also have what are called dance competitions. There are different styles of dancing that take place at the powwow, and they have categories where they have contests. And they would have a first prize winner, second prize winner, a third prize winner in these different dance categories. One of the most popular dance categories is the one you're going to see next, which is called the men's grass dance. Now they say the origin of this dance goes back many, many years ago, when the people out in the Great Plains depended on the buffaloes for many, many things. Number one, as you know, the buffalo was their source of food. Number two, the buffalo hides they would use to make their houses or teepees. Number three, the buffalo skin they would use to make their clothes. Number four, the buffalo bones they would use to make spoons, knives, needles to sew with. And in the wintertime, the boys and girls would take the buffalo ribs, which are very, very big. They would tie those together, and they could make a sled out of it that they could slide down the hills out on the Great Plains. And of course, in the wintertime, they would use the buffalo chips to heat their teepees. So every part of the buffalo was used for something. None of it was wasted. But 300 or 400 years ago, the buffaloes didn't stay in one place. They wandered all over the Great Plains. And because the people depended on the buffaloes for so many things, wherever the buffaloes would go, that's where the people would go. So the people moved from one camping area to a new camping area very often. But before they moved into a new camping area, there were a group of dancers that they would send out before the rest of the people. And these dancers would go into the new camping area and they would dance. But they were doing something else that was very, very important. Because out in the Great Plains, there's this very tall grass that grows. Not a lot of trees, but a lot of tall grass. And what these dancers were doing is they were dancing, they were taking their feet, and they were crushing down the tall grass. So when the rest of the people arrived, they'd have a nice, smooth, flat area to put up their camp. Now, they might send out as many as 100 or 150 dancers. They might be out there for a couple of days dancing. In that amount of time, they'd be able to crush down a nice, large area for the camp. So this is the grass dance now from the people of the Great Plains. Thank you. I want to mention a little bit about the music also. You know, a lot of times we're asked, what are you singing? What are you singing? What does that mean when you're singing those songs? And I just want all of you to understand that in most of the singing that they use for the dancing, and I just... Okay, looks like we have a good group there. All right. Okay, now, you're not out here to take pictures, sir. If you're going to take a picture, you have to dance. You have to dance to take a picture. You ready? Okay. You ready? All right. Okay, now listen, these are the... We have another feather? We need one more feather? Right here. We got it? Okay, here. Here it is.
You should go. You have to.
Okay. Now, these are the instructions. That's when you dance around your feather. You have to dance around your feather first. Then when you hear this part of the music like this, that's when you go down to pick the feather up. Now remember, when you go down to pick the feather up, you must pick the feather up with your mouth. And when you go down to pick it up, you are not allowed to put your hands on the ground. You are not allowed to put your knees on the ground. And you're not allowed to put your elbows on the ground. Okay? Everybody got that? Yes? Good. All right, so first we dance around the feather.
All right, dance around the feather.
I just stood up and like, where is it? I can't update it, right? That's exactly why I can't do it. Because I'm not going to be taco. Come back.
Very good. Oh, that's some great dancing. All right, now we go down.
All right, go.
Okay, so mom's showing us what she got. Don't push her down. I know.
All right, now listen. Keep those feathers. Take them home with you. And when you get home tonight, teach your better half how to do that. All right, let's give a nice hand.
Get home, make some paper.
Good job.
Put that in the mix.
You can have a seat. Good job.
Thank you, volunteers. You did a great job. Thank you so much. You're going to have a chance to dance again later on. So
Thank you.
just get warmed up. Just getting warmed up. All right. Now we're talking about the people from the Great Plains. And we're going to bring out a young lady now to do another dance.
Yeah, I know who
Which is
Superman
one of
is.
the
I
more
like his
popular
music. I
dance
know who you're talking about.
categories, contest dance categories at the powwow gatherings. And this is called the Women's Fancy Shawl Dance, okay? And it's a dance that is fairly new. Now when I say fairly new, I just want to mention something. The history of the Native American people goes back thousands and thousands of years. I think a lot of times we have the mistaken impression that the history of the Native American people didn't start until 1492, when Columbus got lost, landed in this country,
I'm like, all the tassels, what are they
and
called?
said he had found a new world. Now, I don't know what that means, but when he landed here in 1492, in North America, there were a little over 400 million. Think of that now. 400 million Native American people living. Of course, it was new to Columbus.
Everything was
He didn't know about this place, right? But the one thing he did, which is kind of interesting, I think this is so, when you read this in history, I hope you think about it.
Could you tone it down a little
But
bit?
he landed,
No, right?
came out, put his foot down, and said, I declare this now country that is owned by Spain. I said, what about the millions of people that are living here? What do you call them? Well, no, they don't count. This is now Spanish country.
Where's the woman?
Now that's what happened. And I think it's something we should think about. Because this land, as I mentioned before, right here where we're sitting and dancing today, was inhabited by people thousands of years ago. That's the other thing I think we have to think about. Is that the Native American people came across the Bering Straits about 20,000 years ago. That's what they think happened. But they are finding human remains now in North and South America 30 and 40,000 years ago, long before the Bering Straits theory. I also think it's important to remember when we say theory, that is not a fact. They think this is what happened. It doesn't mean that's what happened. They think this is what happened. But now that they're finding more and more remains here that go back thousands and thousands and thousands of years, they have to think about changing their theory. And that's very, very hard. I think maybe you understand this. It's very hard for people who are academic, the people who are professors and who are in all these different areas of archaeology, anthropology. It's very hard for them to change their theories. It takes a long time. But they're beginning now to look into it. And I think eventually those theories are going to change. But we have been here for thousands and thousands of years. So when I say fairly new, this dance goes back to around 1945, which is very new to us when you think about a history that goes back 30 or 40,000 years, right? This particular dance, which is called the Women's Fancy Shawl World War. Now, during the war years, not only did the men volunteer for the armed services, but so did the women. And they traveled all over the world. And they saw how people danced, or how the women danced, in many different countries. Now, back here, it was traditional for the women out in the Great Plains to do a very slow kind of dance around the outside of the circle. And on the inside of the circle, of course, the men would be doing a much more vigorous kind of dancing. Well, when the women returned, they said, we want to have a different kind of dance now. We don't want to have a slow kind of dance around the outside of the circle. We want to dance on the inside of the circle just like the men do. We also want a faster rhythm. We want to move a little faster. So they created this dance that they call the Fancy Shawl Dance. Now, among the Great Plains women, it is traditional for them to carry a shawl. If they have a shawl with them, they're considered to be properly dressed and they participate in any of the festivities. But when the women do this dance today, they wear the shawl over their shoulders and over their elbows, and they spin and turn. And as they spin and turn, they open and close their arms. And they say, the long fringe on the edges of the shawl, when the women dance, it sways back and forth and reminds you of the feathers that the men wear. Now, the difference between the women's shawl dancing and the men's dancing is the fact that when the women dance, they do not wear the feathers and they do not wear the bells on their legs when they dance. But their footwork and their movements are very similar to the movements that the men make. So now I'd like to bring out our conchwoman, and she'd like to give you a demonstration of the women's fancy shawl dance from the Great Plains. this is a test. This is a test. I'm going to see how many of you out there are listening. What was I just singing? Good! Okay, there you are. Right, vocable. So good. You get an A+. All right. We have another dance from the Great Plains people. That's a very popular dance at the powwow gatherings. It's called the old style or tradition. Now, why do they need these dances? Let's think about that. They live out in the desert, the Hopi people, in Arizona. And they're an agricultural people. They depend upon their crops for their food. And one of the only places you're going to get water to grow your crops out in the desert is from the rain. So many of their dances were prayer dances, asking the Creator to bring them rain. I often tell the boys and girls, when you pray for something that is really something that is very needed, you might go to a church, you might go to a synagogue, you might go to a mosque. Well, when we pray, we dance. That's how we pray. And we dance not inside